Capitalism.
We're against it.
Next topic.
Boo.
Boo.
Boo capitalism.
Oh.
Yeah, boo capitalism.
But yay technology when you work.
Zoom.
Yay.
Is it working?
It's working. Okay.
Survive.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for waiting patiently. And welcome to Queering Palestinian Literature with Raji Bathish, hosted by Suneela Mubayi. Now I know, and now you know. And Ben Koerber. Yes, give it up after that. Ooh, sorry, camera angles. Right, I'll adjust at the end, so it'll be focused more on you guys. All right, so my name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder, along with my partner Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is this very space you are in right now. So the Bureau is an independent, all-volunteer queer bookstore that Donnie and I founded in 2012. Kat was there from the beginning. And we have been here at the LGBT Community Center since 2014. So 10 years here at the center. We're alive and kicking. Woo! We're glad you are too, and that you're here. Normally, I would be passing around a bag for donations for the Bureau because we do rely on donations and sales. But today, for obvious reasons that I will be discussing, we are going to be collecting for Gaza Mutual Aid Society. And I'm going to pass this around. There are 2 QR codes, which will make sense in a second. So, according to in their own words, Gaza Mutual Aid Society, we are volunteers with loved ones in Gaza. We give direct mutual aid to displaced and distressed families to meet their basic needs during these catastrophic times. Our main focus has been supporting multiple teams of our family members in providing clean water, food, tents, clothing, and direct cash to families in Gaza. We have also supplied clay ovens, repaired a sewer system, installed a water well, supported a revived school, and funded medical workers and civil defense crews. We are so grateful for the generous community support we have that has enabled us to continue to support these projects. Please keep pushing to stop the genocide, build community, and organize to free Palestine. So, while that is going around, I just wanted to let you know that our regular hours are Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open later when we have events. But weekend events we often do in the afternoon. Yes. And if you're not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that at the back of the room, actually at the register, and or on our website, bgsqd.com. And you'll get an email every other Monday about our many upcoming events. Oh, I also wanted to say Jeffrey Archer is our volunteer today, helping us out, our Sunday volunteer. So before we start, I wanted to read a land acknowledgement and our own statement of solidarity with the people of Palestine. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. The Bureau also recognizes Palestinian liberation as a queer issue. As queer people, we know the pain of being cast out. We have been and continue to be despised by many, even by our own parents, families, and communities of origin. This reality evokes in many of us a deep empathy with others who are likewise seen not as fully human, but as problems to be solved, questions for which the answer is ultimately elimination and erasure. As we watch the ongoing genocide of Palestinians by the State of Israel, carried out with the full support of our government and funded by our tax dollars, we witness the inevitable result of defining a people solely as a threat to the safety and well-being of those deemed inherently worthy of life. This horror compels us to speak out not only against the current bombardment and siege of Gaza by the State of Israel, but against the historical and ongoing violent displacement of Palestinians by Zionists and the conditions of occupation and apartheid under which Palestinians have been forced to live for over 75 years. In our longing for a very different reality, we take inspiration from the words of Jose Esteban Munoz, who wrote, "Queerness is essentially about the rejection of a here and now and an insistence on potentiality or concrete possibility for another world." And that is from Munoz's 2009 book, Cruising Utopia, which we sell here at the Bureau and which I highly recommend. And with that, I'm happy to welcome Raji back to the Bureau. We just looked it up and saw that Raji was here in 2015, I think it was. So welcome back. I wish it was under better circumstances, but we're very happy to have you here. So please give them a warm welcome. Thank you. Likewise. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, thank you.
Almost a decade. Like,
Asha singing, yeah.
others in-
10 years.
Ah.
Well, thank you everybody for coming and thank you so much to the Bureau Queer Division for allowing us to use this space. My name is Ben Koerber. I'm a professor of Arabic and comparative literatures at Rutgers University.
the self-view of.
Oh, I don't know how. Sorry. And I really don't want to fuck with it anymore.
Yeah, sorry.
And with me today are these two flaming cauldrons of lust, deviance, ribaldry, and many other good and beautiful things who it is my honor to introduce to you. Our guest of honor, Raji Bathish, is a writer, queer activist, and scholar of cinema and cultural studies, born in Nazareth in 1970. He holds a diploma in screenwriting from Tel Aviv University, a master's in cultural studies from the Open University of Israel. He has taught university-level courses on Palestinian and Israeli cinema, as well as facilitated numerous workshops on creative writing. He is the author of 6 short story collections and 2 novels, the latest of which was The Flat on Passy Street, published in 2020, Shaqqa fi Shara Passy. His novella, The Container Lady, بالعربي Container Lady,
سيدة الكونتينر.
سيدة الكونتينر, is set to be published at the end of 2024. He also runs a delightfully licentious website called unboob.net. Unboob is, I guess, nothing to do with boobs. Unboob, it means pipe, which publishes short works of queer erotic fiction in Arabic. Highly recommend. Suneela Mubayi is a translator, independent scholar, and writer of Kashmiri Indian and American Jewish descent, whose interests stand at the juncture where language, the body, and poetry intersect. She completed a PhD in Arabic literature from NYU with a thesis on vagabond poets, tramps, and rough trade between classical and modern Arabic poetry. She has translated close to 100 essays, poems, and fiction pieces between Arabic, English, and Urdu for publications such as Banipal, Words Without Borders, Asymptote, Jadaliya, Mada Masr, and elsewhere. She was the joint recipient of a translation fellowship from the National Endowment for the arts and likes linguistic puns, and Iraqi maqam and Syrian TV series. So welcome. Please join me in welcoming both of them, Raji and Suneela. So I thought we would structure this event today around just a couple of texts that Raji has written about Palestine and queerness and the multiple intersections and entanglements between Palestine and queerness. And I think the topicality of these issues is lost on nobody, but I wanted to just start by underlining how important it is, I think, that we have a literary intervention, maybe also an erotic intervention, in topics which are usually monopolized by people, by politicians, by pundits who lack any kind of creative vision or imagination whatsoever. And I think that literature does really such important labor in our individual and collective struggles. So this is one of the reasons I'm thrilled that we have Raji with us to share his narrative craft, his vision, and yes, also his ribaldry and licentiousness, and to allow us to hear and experience Palestine and queerness in ways most of us have not before. So I think we wanted to begin with a text that you wrote recently about from Mahsen. Do you want to introduce the text and then say a little bit about where it comes from?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the mic.
Oh, the mic. Hello.
Yeah, so this text, it was actually about 10 years ago. You had written a short but very important and provocative piece called Ma Tabaqa Li, What Is Left to Me, which is a play on the title of the novella by Ghassan Kanafani, the iconic Palestinian writer who was also the head of the PFLP and was assassinated by the Mossad. And it was part of a portfolio, the Journal of Palestine Studies, of contemporary Palestinian writers sort of outlining their vision of where they see Palestinian literature going and how they, see of themselves. And you wrote something that went very much beyond against what people expect. And I was trying to get it out. If we have time, I can read from it a bit, but I finally managed to get it published a few months ago on Mahzen.org, a really cool new bilingual Arabic-English portal. Everybody should check it out. But I was asked if you had anything, since it was 10 years ago that you wrote it, if you had anything to add to it now that, there's a genocide happening, and, is there something you would have changed? Is there something different? So I thought maybe, we could share something of your afterword from this piece, if you like. Do you want to read a little bit of it in Arabic? You don't want to read any of it in Arabic?
I don't know.
Yeah.
خلينا نبسط شوية يعني.
Yeah.
First couple of sentences.
No, that's why we.
And then we have 2 hours.
مش شايف. اوكي.
لم أكتب شيئا يستحق القراءة والنشر منذ 8 أكتوبر، أي منذ بدأت حرب الإبادة. لقد فقدت طرف التجريب والانتهاك ونبش تربط المسلمات الوطنية والجندرية والجسدية. ثمة نكسة خطيرة تتمثل في العودة القسرية للتلويح بالرموز الأولى التي كانت تبدو وقد انقضى وقتها وأصبحت بالية وفلكلورية. لكن حرب البقاء تحمل قوانين تخصها هي، فلا وقت للكتابة الكويرية. باتت غزة هي نقطة القياس، وهي الحقيقة التي تتربص بي وتزحف نحوي نحونا لتفيدنا بالأخبار العاجلة. وأنت تحتسي القهوة في المقهى الأنيق. تم تدمير مربع سكني في جباليا أو خان يونس، وقتل جراء ذلك 90 شخصا بينهم نساء وأطفال. سقطوا كجبال اللحم في دقائق، وأنت تتماشى مع كلبتك على الشاطئ تتأمل أجساد الرجال الإسرائيليين شبه العراة وهم يتشمسون أو يتدربون لتعزيز كتلهم العضلية، وتحاول معالجة التضارب الغرائزي في رأسك. تتساقط الأجزاء الغزية واحدة تلو الأخرى، وهي تفر من الشمال إلى الوسط، أو من الوسط إلى الجنوب، أو من الجنوب إلى جهنم، وذلك بفعل القنص أو وقاحة الحقيقة. كأني أعيش في فيلم سينمائي مثل التيار الوعي، حيث ينفصل وعي البطل المشبع بالكراهية، الحقد والرغبة بالانتقام والتشفي عن شريط الصوت والتكوين البصري. عن ماذا أكتب؟ عن المعتقلين الذين يتكدسون أمام العدسات بملابسهم الداخلية، عن جمالات أجسادهم، عن تنوعها، من نحت الشقاء جسده، ومن نحتت معاهد اللياقة محاكاة لجسد يبتغيه، عن أنواع السراويل الداخلية التي يفضلها الغزيون، البوكسر أو السليبر الضيقة أم البيضاء القطنية التي تصل حتى الركبة، وهي التي عادة ما يرتديها البالغون مثلي، أي من تجاوزوا 50. عن ماذا أكتب؟ لماذا يحظى الغزيون بشعر قليل على أبدانهم بينما يكتسي رجال الشمال وخاصة القريبون من الحدود مع لبنان بالشعر الغزير وخاصة على ظهورهم؟ هل أكتب نصوصا تفكيكية تعارك الفكر المتكلس؟ صرنا خبيرين بالتفكك، تفكيك الأجساد وتحويلها إلى أشلاء. أم تحمل الأشلاء أطفالها في كيس مبقع بالدم، وأب ينتحب ويحسبن قرب أشلاء عائلته. هذا رأس ابنتي المتمردة، وهذا ذراع ولدي ذو الملامح الأنثوية، وهذه خاصرة ابنتي التي تفضل لاكان على فرويد وتجهز أطروحة عن نظرية بودريار في الإرهاب. أعتقد أن ما تبقى لي هو الانتظار، تمرير الوقت، هكذا لإحصاء الخسائر، لأراها فقط قدرتي على التغريد خارج السرب وإحداث الصدمات الأدبية، أم أن حشيشة انطفأت وبالفعل تحقق وصف أمي لي كما ذكرت قبل 10 سنوات. راجي طالع كتير فلسطيني. ماتت أمي بعدها بعامين، وخوفي أن يكون وصفها قد تحقق الآن، أي أن أكون قد فقدت طرف الانتهاك بفعل العمر أو تأثير فكرة الإبادة.
All that's left to no one afterward. I haven't written anything worth publishing since the 8th of October. Since the beginning of this genocidal war, I've lost the luxury of experimenting and transgressing, of digging up the dirt under everything we don't dare to question, all the truths we hold to be self-evident when it comes to the homeland, the gender norms, the body. There's a serious setback embodied in this forced return to brandishing the fundamental symbols, the ones we thought that had become outdated and irrelevant, to the point of becoming part of folklore. But this latest war of survival has its own rules of engagement, and there is no longer any time for queer writing. Gaza has become the ultimate reference point on which to measure everything. It is now the ultimate truth lying in wait to ambush me, creeping towards me, towards us, to give us the breaking news. As you sip your coffee in some chic cafe, an entire residential block in Jabalia or Khan Yunis is destroyed. As a result, 90 people are killed, among them women and children, who collapsed like an avalanche of flesh in mere minutes. As you walk your dog on the beach, you look at the semi-naked bodies of the Israeli men sunbathing or exercising to strengthen their muscle mass and try to deal with the clashing primal urges inside your head. Gazan bodies topple one after another as they flee from the north of the strip to the center, from the center to the south, or from the south to hell, through being sniped or just by the sheer shamelessness of the truth. It feels like I'm living in some stream of consciousness film where the consciousness of the main character, who is saturated with hate, malice, and a thirst for vengeance and retribution, is dissociated from the audio track and visual reel. What should I write about? About the detainees piled up in front of cameras in their underwear? About the aesthetics of their bodies and all their diversity, ranging from those whose bodies have been sculpted by hardship to those who have sculpted their bodies in fitness centers to mimic a body they want for themselves? About the kind of underwear that Gazan men prefer, boxers, Speedo-style tighties, or the white cotton trunks that go down to the knees, usually worn by older men like me, the ones over 50. What should I write about? Why guys from Gaza get to have less hairy bodies, while men in the north, especially close to the Lebanese border, are covered in hair, especially on their backs? Should I write deconstructive texts that fight against ossified ways of thinking? We've really become experts at deconstructing bodies and transforming them into dissociated limbs. A mother carries her children's dismembered body parts in a blood-stained bag. A father wails in grief near the body parts of his family, repeatedly entrusting God to take care of things for him. Here's the head of my rebellious daughter, he says, and there's the arm of my effeminate-looking son, and here's the waist of my daughter who preferred Lacan over Freud. She was writing a thesis on Baudrillard's theories of terrorism. I think all that's left to me is to wait, to pass the time like this, to count the losses and to see whether I've lost my ability to go outside of the pack and create literary shocks. Or have I lost my mojo, my literary mojo? Has what my mother said about me 10 years ago, that I came out too Palestinian, actually come true? My mom died 2 years later, and I'm afraid she may have been proven right. For I've come out too Palestinian for my own good, and I've lost the luxury of transgressing boundaries, either as a result of aging or from the impact of the thought of this genocide.
We just let those words percolate and settle a little bit. So I have a few questions to draw us into this text a little bit more. It reminds me what you were saying of there being a time or not being a time for queer writing about Palestine. Conversation we were having about your recent journey from Palestine to this writer's workshop or writer's retreat that you're part of, and your experience, your feeling there of sort of dissonance between writing in this very rural space in the middle of nowhere after having coming from Palestine. So if you could say, maybe just talk about a little bit this this recent experience you had, and Suneela might say something.
Can I just give a little bit of
Yeah,
context?
so
Raji happens to be here because we were in a translation residency together in upstate New York at a place called Art Omai for the last 2 weeks. And we were pairs of translators from and the writers from different languages. And, you know, we were in this very isolated, peaceful place in the countryside in upstate New York. And Raji flew in straight from Palestine there. So sorry, I just wanted to give the.
Oh no, that's all.
That's the fun.
Yeah, no, that's what I wanted you to speak about your experience there.
That is a lot of this. But
اوكي.
yeah,
تعبتنا الحكي بالانجليزي.
we're tired of having to speak English.
Trying, yes. First of all, أولا أنا كثير مبسوط إني أكون هنا مرتين خلال 10 سنوات. هاي المرة أكثر محزنة لإلي لأنه هيك إحنا بمرحلة شوي كل الأشياء أكبر منا، وأي تفكير عنا إنه رح نغير إشي بصطدم بإنه إحنا يعني بالذات الكويرز والفلسطينية والناس هاي في عجائب بتصير
Let me continue.
فوقنا أكبر منا كتير، فيها ناس شريرين بيعملوها، وإذا إحنا بنفكر إنه في عنا قوة نعمل نغير إشي نكون متوهمين، بس فشلنا غير نحاول يعني.
Yeah, so I'm really happy to be back here after almost 10 years, but this time is a lot more sad because you're really confronted with the reality of how powerless you are, especially the queers and the Palestinians, to change anything. If you thought you could change, really change something, you're kind of delusional, but we can't do anything other than keep trying.
يعني الشعور عندي كان كتير غريب، إنه أنا جاي مش بس من إنه حرب غزة، كمان إنه حرب لبنان. اللي وأنا من سكان حيفا. من سكان حيفا كان عندنا حيفا تنقصف كل يوم بالصواريخ، والصراع زيادة، يعني صراع إنه نحافظ على حياتنا. عندي ولد عمره 16 سنة، بدي ما يأذيش حاله، بدي إنه الناس اللي بحبهم ما ينقذوش، بس ناحية تانية الحياة مستمرة، وكل الشر اللي حوالينا الجنود والناس المسلحين، والروتين تبع الانفجارات يعني. فكان عندي صعب إنه بنيويورك سيتي لما جينا قبل الإقامة، كان عندي صعب أسمع صوت هليكوبتر، صوت مروحة.
خليني
أو لا أنا أسمع، لأنه أنا تعودت إنه صوت الأصوات بعرف هذا قصف من لبنان، هذا قصف على لبنان، هذا صاروخ، هذا مسيرة، وهذا هاي. بس أول يومين بنيويورك سيتي قبل ما أنجن بالريتريت، ما كنت مش عارف كل صوت ينقز لحظتي، يعني كل صوت هيك ينقزني.
So he was in New York for 2 nights before we went up to the retreat in the countryside, and so since also he wrote this afterward, he wrote this before the Lebanon war with Hezbollah started. So he lives in Haifa, which is in the north. He's a Palestinian citizen from 48, Palestinian citizen of Israel. So, you know, he's coming. Basically, the first 2 days in New York was very difficult with the sounds of the helicopters, and in Haifa, there's explosions around. It's being missiles coming from the south of Lebanon, missiles going towards Lebanon, and you constantly have to sort of think about where you're going, where you're coming from. I have a son who's 16, and I'm always worried that he might get hurt. And the first 2 days in New York with the sounds of any kind of crash or bang sound was very triggering. Sounds of helicopters, and also he's become kind of conditioned to distinguish between this is a missile coming from Lebanon, this is one going from the Israeli side, there's a drone, this is, just, and also all the people, the soldiers around, the armed civilians, and yet life is kind of sort of going on. So there's just kind of the context before we went into this sort of weird isolation.
اوكي. فهناك في الإقامة كان في ديسونانس كبير بين المحل اللي أنا فيه وبين داخل عندي. فالنتيجة كانت إنه روح فكاها ساخر غريب يعني. بفكر
Yeah, so when we got to the residency, there was the sort of dissonance between what's going on inside of me, what's outside became even more sharp, and it came out in this sort of constant sarcasm all the time, which was very popular for some reason.
I became very popular. واكتشفت إنه أنا ما إلي زمان ما حكيتش.
I realized that it's been a long time since I've like actually spoken.
يعني إنه بالحرب أنت بدك تمرق اليوم يعني.
You want to get through the day during the war.
And during the war على أساس إنه بكرة يمكن تخلص يعني، بس تخلص.
Yeah.
فبالريزيدنسي كان إنه عندك 12 يوم. في ناس كتير لطفاء، ميكانيك أبستيت نيويورك بنطوك أكل كل النهار، وحتى بيطلبوش منك تعمل شيء.
Yeah. So like,
ولحظة شوي، وفي فاضي فيش يعني. حيفا مدينة كبيرة تعتبر يعني في الداخل، وأكيد نيويورك. فالدمج بين إنه فجأة أنا بمحل فاضي، طبيعة تخوت، وهاي وأنا لازم أقرر إنه ما أنهارش، جهازي العصبي يضل هاي، لأنه أنا جاي من حرب، سيف تيجي تحطني في معتقل يعني. فقررت إنه هاي حياتي 12 يوم، ولازم أكون لطيف وما أحكيش عن فلسطين كثير يعني. Okay.
so I had to, for 12 days, I just decided that, you know, I came with all this sort of tension inside, and I didn't want to talk about Palestine at all. I didn't want anyone to ask me about Palestine or like interview like what's going on. At the same time, you know, I just decided that, what else? Yes, people, yes. There, I was in this place, and you know, there's the nature is amazing. It's incredible. It's like empty. There's all these like nice sort of upstate New York white Americans who just give me food all the time, and they didn't even expect me to do anything in return. Well, we have to wash the dishes.
I ignored it.
You ign- and I just wanted to sort of keep my sort of nervous system from falling apart, basically.
لا هذا هو، بديش أطول كثير، إنه مهم إنه كان إنه أكتب كل يوم 300 كلمة.
Yeah, so I made a pact with myself just that I'm going to write 300 words every day.
يسب الإشي إنه كمان بالصحراء هاي الخضراء
It's so
إنه بالوقت اللي كانوا بفلسطين نايمين،
yeah.
إنه كنت أحس براحة يعني. كنت فجأة أتغير يعني. لما كانوا فايقين وفي قصف، عادة القصف بيكون الشديد بيكون 7-8 المساء يعني، 6-7-8 الكل بفضي أسلحته على الثاني وخلاص يعني. فلما تكون 6-7-8 أتوتر، أروح على الغرفة وأفتح الأخبار يعني. بس يناموا، أطمن إنه كلهم ناموا، فجأة يبلش جزء جديد اللي هو معزول عن يقظتهم.
So yeah, so basically, it depended on what's happening at the time in Haifa in Palestine. So when it's evening there, the bombing becomes like the most intense, and I would become like the most intense. I would just go and shut myself up in my room and watch the news. Then after it was over, and I sensed like, okay, all my folks in Palestine have kind of gone to sleep. They would come like back to another kind of state of very zen, calm. And in this like green desert.
فكتير كان حلو، وبنصح الكل يعني إنه يروح residency.
So it was really, I advise everyone to apply for residency.
There was another short text, I think, related to something that you just produced there.
Yeah,
Maybe you want
so
to share?
yeah, so one of the pieces that part of the sort of journal that that you wrote while you were there. So we'll share one of the an extract from that. It's from day number 8, I think, right?
Okay, it's about the silence, how to deal with the silence. أعبئ هذا الصمت السحيق بالنفايات كمنشآت فنية متكلفة لم يفهمها أحد، وهي أصلا لا تدرك معنى لذلك. يتوافد عليها طلاب الثانويات ضمن رحلات هرمونية فيملؤون الهاوية الفنية بأغلفة العيكة والعوازل المستعملة والبصاق وأحيانا بالقيء الأصفر، حين يتجاوز أحدهم أو إحداهن حاجز القدرة على تحمل كل ذلك الجمال والرتابة وخداع شمس الخريف. كمنشأة فنية ملت من نفسها ومن أن تكون هي، ساءمت المنشأة من كونها أنا، مغلفة بجدارات دقيقة من السخرية السوداء وغياب الرقابة الذاتية على الكلام والغرائزية اليائسة الجارية في نبعهم للمياه العادمة السامة ربما، حيث تجف تلقائيا عند ملامستها غازات الهواء قبل وصولها لأي ثقب أو جحر لحيوانات طريفة يتلقفها. لكن كرة الصمت في الداخل لا تتوقف عن التضخم لتصبح ما أشبه بالقبة المغلقة ثنائية الرأس. وها أنا أحاول تنفيس منطاد الصمت العملاق العالق داخلي، ولكن كل ما يستقر داخل فراغ الصمت هذا هو نفايات وركام من بيوت مختلفة، حتى أنها لا تتجاوز ولا تقع في نفس الشارع أو المحلة أو المدينة أو الديار. ثمة ركام يتساقط علي ليلا من الجنة، أحصن المنطاد بالألم الهلامي منزوع الهوية زمكانية من نافذة تطل أمي تسألني أين أنا، ومن نافذة أخرى فلنقل شرفة يحلق وجه أبي يبتسم لي بوجهه البهي ليعني لي أنه راض عما آلت إليه أموري التي لا أفهم أصلا كيف أعربها أو أقيمها. حين أستيقظ صباحا لأمضي إلى شؤوني اليومية بعدها، ومن شاشة الحاسوب يطل طيف جدتي بابتسامتها النزقة التي سرعان ما تتحول لنظرة عتاب لا تخلو من اللؤم المجبول بالإحباط. انظر إلى نفسك في الشاشة، متى ستقص شعرك عند حلاق طبيعي؟ هل يعجبك شكلك؟ يبتلع الشعر وجهك والشيب روحك، ويبدو وان حاجبيك مثل مقنسة القش التي كنت أستخدمها لتنظيف السجاد الفارسي في الشتاء. متى ستذهب لحلاق عادي يتقن القصات العادية التي تليق بالرجال الحقيقيين أو حتى إسقاطاتهم الهزلية مما هم على شاكلتك؟ هي لا تعرف ربما أنني أتعمد إطلاق الشعر ليغزو ويحتل وجهي كي لا أشاهد هاوية الصمت داخل عيوني، عيونها، عيونهم.
Just too small. So the Art Omai, where we were, has a large sculpture park that we were there, and we were taken on a sort of semi-non-consensual tour of the sculpture park. And the other thing was that we had to ask someone with a car to do a special favor to take Raji to the nearest CVS about 10 kilometers away to buy an electric shaving machine. So I fill this day 8. I fill this abyss of silence with garbage, like a pretentious art installation that no one understands and which shows no grasp of its own meaning. High school students come in droves to visit it on their hormonal field trips and fill the artistic void with gum wrappers, used condoms, spit, and sometimes yellow vomit when one of them, boy or girl, exceeds the threshold of endurance for all
It's
that.
not real. It's all.
Okay. There's elements of threshold of endurance for all that beauty, monotony, and deceptive autumn sunlight. Like an art installation bored of itself and of existing, the installation has become wary of being me, wrapped in thin walls of dark sarcasm and a lack of self-restraint in words and in primal desperate instincts coursing through a spring of water, perhaps toxic sewage, water that evaporates on contact with the gases in the air before it ever reaches the holes or the layers of cute creatures that are ready to lap it up. Yet the ball of silence within me never stops inflating. It is becoming something like a closed dome with twin peaks. Here I am trying to deflate this giant air balloon of silence trapped inside me, but all that settles within the void of that silence is refuse and rubble from various houses. They aren't next to each other or even share the same street, neighborhood, city, or country. The debris falls on me nightly from heaven. I fortify that air balloon with amorphous pain, stripped of any temporal or spatial identity. From a window, my mother appears, asking me where I am. From another window, or perhaps it's a balcony, my father's face hovers, giving me a radiant smile to tell me he's satisfied with how things have turned out for me. Though I still don't understand how to spell out for him what I do when I wake up in the morning to go about my day. From the computer screen, my laptop screen, my grandmother's apparition appears with her naughty smile that would quickly turn into a look of reproach and spite laced with disappointment. Look at your reflection in the mirror, the screen. When will you let a proper barber cut your hair? You think you look good? The hair is swallowing up your face, and its grayness is swallowing up your soul. Your eyebrows look like the straw broom I use to clean the Persian rugs in the winter. When will you go to a proper barber, one who knows how to do normal haircuts that suit real men, even if for farcical versions of manhood like you? She may not realize that I've deliberately let my hair grow out and let it invade and overrun my face, so I don't have to stare into the abyss of silence inside my eyes, her eyes, his eyes, and their eyes.
Yalla, let's do funny thing. It's like a very.
Yeah, and I
sad.
promised licentiousness and ribaldry. So maybe we can move on to. I think the next text is a little bit more sensual, if you will, on from the apartment on Rue de Passy.
Yes.
Do you want to say a little bit about that text, and both of you? And then maybe, we don't have to read, just for the sake of time, not to read the whole thing in Arabic, just the English. Yeah. So if you say about what the novel is about.
A little bit of context.
Okay. My latest published novel was about it's called The Apartment in Rue de Paris. Rue de Passy. It's about two gay friends who, in the second Intifada, they immigrate to go to Paris together. And there is the story of them. They separate and they meet another time. And
They are lovers also?
No,
they're not lovers.
After 18 years. So it's sort of melodramatic, story which is aware of its melodramatic. What? Whatever. And it was translated to Italian lately. Now it's being translated to French, Hebrew, and I hope.
And I'm working on the
English. So if there is Italian readers here, we have one copy. The publisher sent me one copy only for sale. And the thing about this the novel, it's are all the Palestinians are refugees real كان ايش يعني they are انه هل كل الفلسطينيين هن مشروع لاجئين ولا في لجوء متنوع عند الفلسطينيين؟
So is it sort of posing the question about refuge and migration? Is that are all Palestinians just potential refugees in the kind of typical way that we are? There different sort of conceptions we can have of, you know, of like migrating or of forced, you know, being forced to migrate or being a refugee.
لأنه أحد شروط اللجوء كيف بعرف من الفلسطينيين والآخرين إنه هي إنك ممنوع ترجع على البلد بمنشأ، يعني إنه مجبور تضلك بالهاي. فهذا الشرط مش موجود عند الفلسطينيين اللي بيحملوا الجواز الإسرائيلي أو الهوية الإسرائيلية. إنك فيش ولا دولة بالعالم بتعترف إنه فلسطيني بيحمل جواز إسرائيلي وممكن يطلب لجوء. هاي المأساة اللي بالرواية، يعني إنه واحد من التنين بقرر يرجع فلسطين والتاني بيضل، وتصير في خيانة هناك بيناتهم بس هي نابعة من إنه في خيار الرجعة، يعني في خيار العودة يعني.
So it's all sort of revolving around the problematic of the question of asylum and being a refugee for the Palestinians who carry the Israeli nationality. Because generally one of the conditions of asylum is that you can never go back to your home country. But in the case of the Palestinians who have the Israeli ID, there's no country in the world that would consider granting asylum to Palestinians with the Israeli ID. But these two, they want to go and be, you know, emigrate because out of a sense of wanting to have asylum, but one of them decides to go back and the other wants to stay, and there's a big kind of betrayal that happens, and that's kind of the main sort of problematic in the novel.
بعد أنا
To Paris, sorry, yeah.
أنا كتبت الرواية هاي بسنة 2020.
So I wrote it.
صدرت ب 2020 بالضبط وقت الكوفيد، فقعدت سنتين ما حداش كتب عنها كلمة، يعني كانت مجهولة يعني.
The book came out in 2020 during the lockdown, so it suffered because of that, because it kind of remained just unnoticed for almost 2 years. Nobody wrote anything about it or noticed it.
وإسا حاليا هي اللي قاعدة تاخذ كتير اهتمام بالعالمي، بس هالحالة في الوضع الموجود حاليا بالنظام الصهيوني هل رح نقدر نصير نطلب لجوء كفلسطينيين بيحملوا جواز إسرائيلي، لجوء ضد النظام الصهيوني.
So yeah, now in the recent sort of last year or so, it started to finally get some attention and interest it deserves. But with now what is happening in the last year or so, it kind of brings the question again of like, can we as Palestinians with the Israeli ID, can we get asylum now, ask for asylum? So yeah, it was based like partially on personal experience because you lived in.
Yes, it's only 20% from the novel. The other parts was fiction. So the extract that I will read is from the perspective of one of the two protagonists, which is Amir. So the two heroes, the protagonists are Amir and Jamil, right? Amir is from a bourgeois family, and Jamil is from a working class family. And Jamil's mother was the housekeeper of years. So there's a struggle
Jamil has decided that in Paris, the way he wants to survive is by sort of hunting very, very rich, older, white French men who have nice houses and lots of money and so on. And Amir doesn't want to do that. So this passage is Amir talking about his love affair with a Turkish migrant named Vehbi, who he fell in love with. So the chapter is called "Ana la akzib walakinnani atajammal." Like, I'm not lying, but I'm like embellishing the truth. You settle for too little. That's what Jamil said to me as we walked down Rue Saint-Martin in the summer of 2001. I don't exactly remember the conversation that ended up leading to the statement, but it terrified me. The first thing that crossed my mind at that moment, was that he, the one who had planted despair in my body, he never settled for less. After he told me that he had decided to leave Paris for good and return to Palestine to commit a spiritual suicide, I felt like I had to book a ticket to return for good before him. So Jamil decides to return to Palestine. Yeah. To book it, I felt that I had to book a ticket also to return for good before him. It was dangerous territory that could upend everything for me. He postponed his return by a month after mine because he had more money than I did, enough to last him a month, and that was reason enough. I was the one who had brought him to Paris, and I wouldn't let him stay there a single day after me. All the options were on the table in my mind. At certain times, I was sure he couldn't manage anything for a single day without me. At other times, he would surprise me with statements like, "You settled for too little. Amir, I can't stand your depressive state anymore." It was as if he was saying to me, "It's either me or you. I've come to know so much about you, and you even more about me. You brought me here, and the time has come for one of us to leave. The one who settles for less should leave, the depressive one. The city cannot tolerate someone who settles for less." He would say that to make me feel guilty for the despair and sadness I spread in the world, while he would tremble with happiness anew every few months. I wouldn't let him stay here where I returned home, both are home, to wither away from AIDS, humiliated, emaciated, ugly, consumed by shame. I wouldn't let him stay here, and I would return to kill him if I remained alive. I would shove him onto the metro rail track to die, or I'd push him onto the périphérique encircling Paris to be run over. I made my decision to leave after I was certain that he too had booked a plane to return. The time gap of 1 month and 3 days worried me, as if he were waiting for me to leave so he could make his move and remain. The difference between us was that I would find myself unintentionally getting into relationships with men who were moderately well off, at least at worst, those living in the more respectable suburbs of Paris, and at best in very small apartments in one of the city's central areas. They could barely afford to pay for their own living expenses. Whereas Jamil, I don't know how, he always managed to cruise wealthy men from the Parisian bourgeois elite, those who own spacious apartments in the finest, most upscale neighborhoods, particularly in the western and southwestern parts of the city, that allowed for living or pretending to live a married life. I love these asides of yours. It's like my favorite thing about your writing. In the early 2000s, there were no dating apps to begin with. Online dating was limited to 1 or 2 global websites, and the ideal way to cruise someone was either at the bars concentrated in the Marais district, specifically on 2 intersecting streets, or at saunas that were widespread across the city, especially in the northern area known as the Rive Droite. Another option was nightclubs that had dark areas where you could be alone with someone, or at least get that sense. The most famous of these at the time was Le Dépôt, where prominent celebrities, fashion designers, actors, and people from both the middle classes and the banlieue went to party. In such places, it was difficult to tell a bourgeois man apart from a beggar when the desire ignited, especially in the darkness of the underground floors where everyone had stripped, as naked as when they came out of the womb, so that they all seemed to be like the same, like twins. And yet, Jamil would always walk out of there arm in arm with someone from the haute société. He would live off them for a few weeks, dine in the finest Parisian restaurants, get access to exclusive clubs, mingle with people coated in the stardust of glamour and elegance without having to make much effort. Meanwhile, I would walk out arm in arm with one of the poor, the drunk, the eccentric, the disfigured, or anarchist leftists whose clothes and worn-out coats reeked of loose Cuban tobacco and the dried-up sweat of someone who hadn't bathed in over half a century. I used to hang around with these people in crowded and deserted stations, both in the city center and in the more scary suburbs. I would wake up in neighborhoods whose names I didn't even know, startled by the sounds of police cars, ambulances, or sometimes both. While Jamil went out arm in arm with French, Belgian, and Swiss men of pure blood, I would go arm in arm with refugees and undocumented migrants. Moroccan, Romanian, Portuguese, Turkish, man, the Turks. I had lost a lot of weight in a few months and become very thin, but without losing my shapely features that made me attractive. With my average height, the men I cruised or who cruised me would revel in playing with my body, indulging in the eroticism of the master-slave dynamic. Even Vehbi, a strikingly tall, slender, tall, slender, and irresistibly charming Turkish migrant with an intense but unthreatening masculinity, took advantage of my lightweight. While walking through the garden of the Church of Saint Eustache, he lifted me high into the air, then brought me back down and carried me in his arms. He swung me left and right, then sat me down firmly on a park bench. Kneeling on the ground, he gave me a long kiss with such appetite and passion that the taste of his saliva still lingers in my mouth after all these years. Then he lifted me up again and sat me back down in open view of everyone, even though the garden was mostly empty. Under the lamplight, and despite the prevailing darkness, it was the beauty of it that moved me. Not the beauty of the person, but the beauty of the moment. The kind of beauty that carves an indelible mark in your memory. Vehbi was stunningly beautiful, with all the world's allure and temptation concentrated in his eyes and body. His physique was divine, chiseled by nature's genius that had spared nothing to make it perfect. Yet in spite of this, he was sad, lost, and lonely. I don't know why his eyes would well up with tears every time he embraced me in the street, crushing me in his arms as he caressed me. His was the kind of beauty that etches itself in one's imagination. I seemed to sense it from afar and picked up on it the way a dove swoops down on a rare grain of wheat in a fertile field. The arms that squeezed me tightly were the same as the teary eyes that bled with passion and sorrow for the unknown. This contradiction used to drive me mad, making me feel like I was the most beautiful creature in the universe. I remember how Vehbi, who barely spoke any French or English, decided to take advantage of our sitting at the very back of the metro train carriage on line 7, heading in the direction of the Place d'Italie. He began kissing me voraciously after pinning me to my seat effortlessly. It was 2001, and it still wasn't a common sight for two men to be kissing so passionately on public transportation, even in Paris. Vehbi poured all the world's beauty into that inimitable moment, carving it into existence with the fierceness of a Turkish or an Arab man, both worldwide symbols of homophobia, loving on each other on a metro train in motion. What enchanted me then was the tenderness and sweetness that planted itself deep in my body. Most of all, it was the love, the sheer love, the knowledge that you're so desired, that your partner cannot wait for you to reach a private space to devour your delicate lips, feeling no pain from the muscular, and you feel no pain from the muscular strength he exerts upon you to pin you down, but instead an incomparable magic and pleasure. The magic of seeing your reflection in his eyes shining with tears. Even when we finally made it to a real bed, the way our bodies collided was beautiful. That is the only accurate adjective with which to describe it, beautiful. It's a bit long, but I'm gonna go on. Is that okay?
Yes.
True story.
Yes, Khan.
Huh?
Yes, Khan.
Yes. He would enter me like a fearsomely high wave at sunset, the kind that after it passes you, makes you marvel at how merciful and soft it was, carrying all the warmth of late summer evenings. That was what Vehbi was like in bed, like seawater at sunset in late August. But I was the wave crashing upon the shore. My waves would break on his warm, smooth body against his thighs, which could bear the full weight of the moment, the full weight of a body writhing upon them, licking them, sucking up everything between them. My body would rise and fall through the heaven and hell of the sparse, tiny hairs around his nipples, his navels, and the curves of his hips down toward his pelvis. In those moments, I couldn't feel the roar of the body inside me, nor the teeth, nor the lips kissing me for some of my taste to remain within them, as if I might vanish at any moment, as if I wasn't real and had no flesh or blood to fill it, as if he needed to taste my blood and sweat to confirm my material existence. There was no flesh left on my body. I felt like I was a collection of bones connected by little bits of tissue passing through the right places, the places that made me feel alive. I couldn't understand. When he would leave, I would look at my body in the mirror, how he had found fleshy spots to kiss or bite without my sensing it. I would look at it again in the mirror, shocked at how many green and blue marks there were all over my body. I'd walk down to the street or go to my French language class, me and my blemishes from a wild night, beaming with pride and a sense of delight and love as I thought of his blue eyes and shining forehead, and the look of pain fused with pleasure on his face while penetrating me. I would think of my love for someone with whom I had no complete language in common that allowed us to express ourselves to each other in full sentences that had a beginning and an end. I was busy creating beauty instead of my future, when Vehbi interrupted me with fragmented sentences. I have to go, I'm going to travel. Where to? I asked. To Turkey, to Izmir. Then he began to cry, for real this time. At that moment, I was struck by a feeling or thought that outward machismo and physical prowess are often a cover to hide weakness, fragility, childlike need, and loneliness under the front of animalistic desire. This idea stuck with me for a long time afterwards. Unlike the weirdos I used to meet in bars and clubs, Vehbi managed to extend a very soft hand with feminine fingertips to delve deep inside me and extract a jewel capable of radiating light and glowing as were we to polish it with just a little oil. I also became certain of another thing, it was akin to a curse to come true time and again. Every time I met someone who swept me away during an encounter brimming with an initial infatuation, physical desire that hinted at the beginnings of an enduring love, he would have a flight scheduled to take off at 6 o'clock the next morning. Or it would be his last night passing through that city, whatever city we were in, with little possibility of returning or of us meeting in a third place to pick up from where it had stopped. And even if that could happen, the point of resumption would not be the same as the starting point in its details, geography, history, or even its climate. The phrase, "This is my last night here, and I'm not ready to stuff an entire lifetime into it," was not just some movie cliche line repeated in romantic films, but rather an essential component of that curse that stuck its tongue out at me every time. Vehbi expanded our limits and pushed them, all kinds of limits, those of desire, passion, the body, love of the body, temptation, silence. Silence would speak between us. There are people who make you feel uncomfortable or embarrassed when silence prevails between you, even for just a few moments. But when we were on the metro or on the bus going back and forth, the silence between Vehbi and me was comforting and playful. It was as though our mere presence together pierced any silence and transcended the need for words, any words. It was enough to look into his blue eyes, to read in them everything I wanted. But I read only what I wanted to read, and never asked him for the details. In one night, one of our last nights together, I discovered that he only held a 6-month visa that had already expired. He was supposed to leave French territory immediately, or rather, he should have left it the previous day or the day before. Back in his home country, he was a nautical engineer, but here he had been working at a worker at a Turkish shawarma restaurant owned by a cousin, perhaps his maternal cousin, I wasn't sure. But it hadn't worked out. Things hadn't gone as he hoped. The city was already full of guys working at shawarma places, and it didn't need one more. And in any case, he'd never done such grueling work before. In my silly naivete, I had assumed that Turks, unlike us, Palestinians, didn't need a visa to live in France. At that moment, I felt extremely pathetic for many reasons, the most significant of which was the holder of an expiring visa who was hooking up with someone whose visa had already expired in a country that didn't want either of them there. Honestly, I didn't have the strength to follow him to Izmir. I couldn't even imagine how things would be there. I was so sure that whatever happened in Paris belonged in Paris only and couldn't be replicated anywhere else, not in the same way, not even in a remotely similar way. I couldn't even picture myself with him in Izmir, nor did he insist on me following him there. Maybe he was married and had children, blonde with wild blue eyes like his, or perhaps he had a fiancée waiting to marry him after this failure of a voyage. I started to have dark thoughts about his life back there. What I was certain of was that he couldn't afford the luxury of traveling back to Turkey just to renew his visa and then coming back again to me here, or let's say there. Making a living takes precedence over love in such cases, especially the kind of love for the strange men I chose, unlike the ones Jamil chooses to target with his Cupid arrows. Jamil would have spent a wild night with Vehbi as a way of scrutinizing him up close, only to conclude that he wasn't worth it. And that would have been the end of it. He could have easily snatched Vehbi from me, just to show me that this fantastically attractive creature couldn't resist his charms. They'd have shared an elaborately debauched night of filth, given that neither could resist the other, and that would have been that. He would then remind me that I'm a fool, overly romantic, clueless, wasting my emotional energy in the wrong place. Paris is a meat market, he would say, my dear naive one. And those who work grueling jobs without the proper immigration papers, you can spend one night with them in which you can suck them dry for whatever they have to offer and then never answer their calls again. Was this the too little that Jamil would fault me for settling for? For all the love that at least I had gotten to experience in Paris, that cursed city that makes its squares, plazas, train stations, and dreamy narrow alleys and a haven for foreign lovers, while outside of these alleys in the larger reality, it despises them, spitting them out violently once the metaphors are spent. And then there was the smell of the shawarma. I could normally detect its stench from 2 kilometers away just to avoid it. And I knew it to be a smell that doesn't vanish even after bathing once, twice, even more, even with the use of chlorine-based products that destroy your skin cells. But on Vehbi's body, I could never smell it, not even faintly, not even like when you get a whiff from someone who has just eaten shawarma, let alone been working with it all day. He would meet me after work near Rue Saint-Denis, where the stench should have been overpowering enough to end everything before it even began. But instead, his body exuded the scent of a melancholic masculinity. His body was clean, pure, smooth, as if he had deliberately cleansed himself in a Turkish bath before meeting me. Vehbi left, and our farewell was a fleeting one. In that very same back seat of the last train car on line 7, he got off at the Jussieu station, and I stayed on by myself. And the scent of his absence became saturated with nothing but shawarma. Questions?
Which character are you in that scene?
Yes.
Not the shawarma. Yes.
For me it was بالنسبة لي كانت كتابة الرواية هاي الرواية بالذات تجربة لربط مثلية بالاقتصاد، يعني بالمادي، بالمصاري، فلوس. إنه إحنا دائما بنحكي بالحقوق الإنسان والأقليات، وكل واحد من حقه يعيش حياته كيف بده وكذا، بس ولا مرة بنحط الحساب الاقتصادي، مين معه مين معوش، وإمكانية علاقة المثلية بالمادة إشي كتير مهم اللي أنا حبيت أطرحها بهاي الرواية، عشان ما يكونش الأفكار عن فكرة المثلية كإشي أمورفيك اللي هو هيك لحاله طاير بالهواء يعني.
So the main, usually when we talk about queer issues, about gayness, mostly we talk about like rights, about like identity and so on. But in this novel, I really wanted to connect the queer to the material, the economic. How are the two connected? Who in relationships, who can pay the bills, who can't pay the bills?
The fluidity is
إنه الإشي مش محلق هيك لحاله.
No, it's not some amorphous, like queerness is not some or abstract amorphous thing separated from everything else. And often like we don't really talk about the material aspect of queer relationships and how it shapes them.
يولا.
do the yoga.
Yeah, how are we on time? Do we want
Oh,
to?
just to open it up, maybe. I mean,
Yeah. Do you want to? I mean, if people want to pitch in, أنت بدك تحكي شيء عن يولا؟
لا إنه إذا بدك تحكي لي اخترتي هون مشروع.
I mean, I started working with Raji, I think almost 12 or 13 years ago, because I was living in Haifa at a very stupid exploitative internship at the time. And I wanted to do my PhD research. This is before I started my PhD on Palestinian writers inside 48 who hold the Israeli ID. And I happened across Raji's name just by chance. And since then we've had this kind of special relationship on and off where I translate him, we meet in different continents and so on. But the novel that was before this, Yola, is a short novella. It's more experimental novella. It's told from the point of view of one of the members of a sort of old bourgeois family from Nazareth that has lost all its money, and its various members are either like going mad or emigrated and so on. And that I translated a long section from it. I don't think we have time to read it here, but yeah, Slavic bodies. No, there's no Mafi Ba'at. But I was just wondering before we open it up if you can, because these are the first, before this you were writing short stories, you were writing like experimental texts that were like a mix of poetry and prose before that. So what kind of made you go towards writing a novel? If you want to talk maybe a little bit about your that cinema that you teach, cinema criticism in Haifa.
Not in Haifa, open university.
Yeah, open.
Overall. ايش السؤال؟ النوفل.
يولا
كان في ضغط، في فترة كان في ضغط كبير اجتماعي انه بيصيرش الواحد يضل يكتب نصوص قصيرة وقصص قصيرة يعني انه لازم يصير روائي يعني. إنه كيف ستي قالت لي بالنص إنه لازم تروح نحلق طبيعي، فإنه صار في نوع من الضغط، فهم إنه لازم أكتب رواية، بس عن إيش بدي أكتب رواية. فكتبت يولا وأخواته اللي كانت مقاطع إبيزودز من 4 إخوة نفس العائلة، أو اللي هي ممكن تنقرا كفصول منفصلة وكرواية واحدة، لأنه في شخصيات مشتركة. أو بس مشروعي الأساسي كان إنه أكتب الشقة في شارع باسي. حتى لما هسه رجعت كتبت آخر رواية كمان هي نوفيلا صغيرة عن سيدة كونتينر، يعني اللي رح تصدر في برلين في خان الجنوب في بداية السنة. ف فكان يعني في نوع من هيك انه لا بدي اكتب نص اطول، او بدي اكتب نيراتيف اطول، او كذا. بس لسه وصلت لنتيجة انه لا خلص، بكتب اللي انا بدي اياه واللي انا بستمتع لما اكتبه يعني. وبديش أفوت بلخة سوق الروايات بالعربي، كتير إشي واسع وفيه تنافس قوي ومحسوبيات وكذا، فما بديش أفوت بهذا أنا عندي الزاوية الخاصة تبعت عندي مجال للأسف يعني. كمان ما فيش كتاب كويريين كتير قاعدين يكتبوا بالعربي، عرب يعني. في بيكتبوا بالإنجليزي أو بيكتبوا بالفرنسي أو بالترجمة، بس يعني أنا من القلائل اللي بيكتبوا بالعربي للعرب بالأول وبعدين بالترجمة.
So there was, after all the sort of short experimental texts, there was kind of the way that my grandma told me, you know, go to get a proper haircut, that there's became this kind of pressure from the cultural milieu that you have to write a novel to be like a, you know, a recognized writer. And so I kind of, I wrote Yola, which is kind of a series of episodes about these 4 siblings, and it can be read in any order. But what I actually wanted to write, like the bigger project in my mind, was the apartment on Rue Passy. But still, there's this kind of, and what I wrote after that, which is a novella that's going to come out from Berlin, from Arabic publisher in Berlin. I kind of came to the conclusion that I don't, whatever I write, whether it's short text, long text, etc., I want to write kind of what I really feel that I need to express, and not because there's a whole the world of Arabic novels has become like a very sort of competitive, like cutthroat arena where people there's a lot of like, because there's a money that's come to be involved now. And there's not very many queer writers that are writing openly queer. There's a lot of writing with like frank sexuality in it, but not very many queer writers writing in Arabic. They're writing in French or in English, or they write and they get the translation gets published even before the Arabic gets published. So I think that's like a important thing to think about. And you know, if people would like to jump in with questions, comments, just experiences of queer life in Paris.
Paris. People, when I wrote this novel, I took it, I presented to an editor, Egypt. So he told me, are you coming to Cairo from Paris? I told him no, from Tel Aviv. He thought that I live there. So people.
But you did live in Paris for a
Yes,
while,
but
right?
only 1 year. It was really in 2001, and the story, the scenes with Wehbi is real. But no, I didn't live till 2019. So شو كان السؤال؟
Yeah.
Okay.
And would you?
No, I thought we should open it up if people have questions.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, because it sounds like the dynamic between your two main characters, and they're supposed to be best friends, but they seem very like they hate each other almost. And I'm curious, what was your inspiration in crafting that relationship, and where did that decision come from to create that intense dynamic?
Okay. Thank you. ناخد كمان أسئلة ولا؟
As
Okay.
you wish. Does anyone else have anything they want to, if you want to take more than one question together? Or comment or,
Okay. The relationship was built from the fact that the Amir was in the same school with Jamil, but Jamil was the son of
the cleaning, the
the
domestic,
cleaning of,
his mom
and
cleaned.
Amir was the son of the bourgeois family that won't let the domestic with her son to sit and eat with them. They're not allowed. So the conflict was based,
But they still go to the
in
same
fact,
school.
but they still go to the same school. So, and Amir was شو يعني يتنمر عليه؟
Bullying.
was bullied. يعني مفعول به.
Yeah, he
was
was bullied.
bullied, and Jamil was the strong one who have a lot of friends, and so this is the complicity of the relationship. But they went they still يعني كملوا يكونوا أصحاب.
They continued to remain friends.
and وراحوا على باريس مع بعض.
They went to Paris.
بس هناك بينت الفوارق. يعني بينت
There that the differences really came to the surface.
to the surface لأنه العلاقة مبنية على العلاقة مبنية على غيرة وكراهية يعني مبطنة.
Because the relationship, there's a lot of jealousy and sort of repressed like hate, resentment at the base of the relationship, and that's like there, omnipresent.
So Amir, the one who comes from a higher class sort of in society, is the person who's actually attracted to or attracting undocumented immigrants, and okay, that's interesting.
And Jamil he thinks that the way to survive is to be with, only go for the very rich.
And Amir is not aware of the economical
He's not.
issue.
He's never had to struggle.
Yes, and I think that Amir was also naive and romantic, but also depressive. He has he lost a lot of weight, and he thought that he had HIV, AIDS. So that he thought that he lost a lot of weight because he had the disease.
Yeah.
So it's like historical profile of the 2001 when the HIV was threatening the gays' life still.
I wanted to ask you about your connect relationship with cinema and cinema criticism, because you teach it, you write about Palestinian and Israeli films a lot. Even in your novels, there's cinema constantly. In Yola, one of the characters is obsessed with the actresses from 70s Egyptian films.
اوكي.
احكي شوي.
علاقتي مع السينما كانت كتير من البداية، لأنه أبوي حتى في عندي فصل في الشقة في شارع كثير اسمه سينما باراديسو، لأنه أبوي كان عنده الكافيتيريا فيها بقلب السينما في عنا، وأنا وأمي كانت تشتغل كمان، فكان ياخذني معه على الشغل. فكنت بالسبعينات حضرت كل الأفلام الرومانسية تبعت مصر، الحب هاي، وصرت حتى اوبسيست بالسينما، يعني صرت انه هي جزء من المخيال تبعي، يعني جزء من التكوين الوجداني. فبلشت أكتب. طبعا الكاتب هو مش بس بكتب أدب، غالبا بكتب كمان مقالات. فبلشت أكتب عن السينما عنا في فلسطين وفي الصحف العربية المنتشرة في الوطن العربي. ومن هون أخذوني كآرت، يعني معيش PhD أنا، فأخذوني أعلم عن السينما الفلسطينية. وهيك هي علاقتي بالسينما، هي البيبي الثاني أو الشيء الثاني اللي أنا بحبه. ودائما بالسينما أنا بالأدب أنا بحس حالي إنه بدخل كتير مشهدية سينمائية، حتى بصريا بترجم أفكار كتير مرات سينمائيا، أكثر من إنها اعتمادا على إني قارئ نهم وهيك. يعني قراءاتي طبعا أنا قارئ منيح يعني، بس مش نهم. المبنى الوجداني تبعي، المبنى المعرفي، هو أكثر سينمائي من إنه أدبي يعني.
So when I was a kid in the 70s, my father had my mom worked, both my parents worked. My father managed the cafeteria at the main cinema in Nazareth, where I grew up, which is the largest Palestinian city inside 48. And so when my mom went to work, he would take me all the time with him. So I got like this throughout my childhood, this dose of which, and Egypt is the main Arab country that produces cinema. So I got this huge dose of, and it's like an essential part of my sort of my psychic makeup, my cultural makeup. I'm not as voracious a reader actually as I am a movie watcher, and so I always put in a lot of my writing has, you know, cinematic elements, like dramatic, you know, kind of what do you call it, scenography in it. And you know, I'm not an academic, but because I started, you know, writing a little bit about films, so I ended up like being asked to write like reviews, you know, and like articles and so on. So that's how it basically started. That the cinema is an essential sort of part of my makeup.
I'm a very bitchy critic.
يعني روضة لا انت تسألين
أنا
بالانجليزي
أنا بجاوب بالعربي.
So I will ask you, I was wondering, because we were speaking about bringing out the economic sides of, like, and the material sides that contribute to the precarity of queerness in the context of the diaspora, but also probably in 48, whether there is a relationship between literary figures such as yourself within 48 with organizations For example, I'm thinking of أصوات نساء مثليات that are from Haifa or Al-Qaws that have also been operating since the 2000s on an organizing level. So I guess to summarize my question, is there a relationship between fiction writing and historicizing the organizing that is happening within Palestine of 48 over the questions that you bring out in your novel? مفهوم؟ تقريبا
على علاقة المخيال بالواقع المادي وبتأريخ فلسطين الكويرية مثلا إذا في علاقة مع منظمات تشتغل من 2000 مثل القاف
علاقة أنا معي
صح أو علاقة الأديب بشكل عام إنه ما بعرف
مع الجماهير.
مع
أوكي
الجماهير
فهمت
نعمل هذا المايك أنا
بس أنا علاقتي بالإن جي أوز وبالجمعيات مش كتير منيحة مش لسبب
I don't have a really good relationship with NGOs.
بعرفش مش كتير يعني علاقات موفقة بس أنا اشتغلت مع القوس مشروع كتير حلو كان وقتها اللي هي creative writing عن الجسد والكويرنس وكان هذا بال 2010 2011 وقت الربيع العربي يعني وقت هاي السنة الاستثنائية يعني وكان كتير ناجح وعليه بنينا بالأول الكتابة الكويرية في قبضيتا وقتها كان بعدين أنا فتحت الويب سايت سميته أنبوب اللي إحنا بنينا عليها بس إنه أنا يسعدني دائما يعني إنه يكون أعطي من تجربتي وهيك بس بعرفش يعني الحسابات مش قاعدة بتزبطش مع بعض يعني بحس حالي يعني مؤسسة أدبية قائمة بذاتها وأكثر تشبيكاتي مع أكثر مع ناس من لبنان مصر أكبر محيط أكثر فلسطين شوي بما إنه لسه كثير إحنا privileged يعني إنه نحكي عن هذا الموضوع فيعني أكيد حاليا كمان في انقطاع من هاي الناحية فيا ريت إنه يكون في هيك مبادرة نقدر بس بسؤالك أنا في موضوع كثير عم يضايقني.
Can I just translate the
Oh,
first
okay.
part? Just very briefly that I just did with the queer organizational course in 2010-11 during this exceptional year called the Arab Spring. We did a project where I gave a bunch of workshops about writing and the body and queerness, which was very good. But other than that, like I'm kind of a literary foundation, like institution, all by in one person, and my engagements are more with people from the Arab countries around, so like Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, also a little bit, right?
And Europe, the
And
diaspora.
the diaspora, which is
بس في شيء شوي بيضايق بما انه في فرصة انه في تعامل مع الكاتب انه كويري بس اذا بيكتب بالانجليزي يعني في ينزل كانه لا بشكل عام يعني انه بيلفت النظر بس اذا بيكتب بالانجليزي او بالفرنسي ساعتها هو يعني انه هو اجى على الغرب عنا وهسه هو يعني متحرر وبيكتب فلا في لازم تتغير شوي هاي النظرة يعني انه يكون في إنه ننطلق من العربي للغات الثانية مش بالعكس يعني.
So what is annoying me right now is that an Arab queer writer is only like really noticed or recognized if he or she or they start writing in English or in French. It's like, they came to the West, and so now they're like free and liberated, and now, they can like write about their experience, but it shouldn't. That's, it's troubling, especially because right now there's really like, in a sort of, it's in a messed up, perverse way, but there's a real chance to like say, create a whole new discourse at this moment. And it shouldn't be, it should be, the writing should be coming out in Arabic, and then after that, can be translated or shared and so on. And you shouldn't have to make this linguistic switch first to get this stamp of approval before you can do queer writing. Anything? Are we?
You're pretty close to the end of it.
Yeah.
I think you're
Are you bored?
I think you're good. I think
Are you
we
bored?
put your
No.
Yeah.
But if
So-
there are more
Oh,
questions.
one more question. Then maybe the last question. Yeah,
So you are in Tel Aviv or Nazareth,
Haifa.
in Haifa?
Yeah.
And what is all of these things that you say about the relationship with the local, with the trans or sort of trans-Arab community, what does it mean? I'm just trying to get a sense of what it means in terms of literary life there, or your relationship to groups there in Haifa. I just to get a sense of a granular, like a daily life experience of what it means to be there now, and particularly now.
كيف الحياة الأبدية
الأدبية.
بالنسبة لحدا فلسطيني عايش بحيفا
Now in this
in the current
Current?
I mean, I
yeah.
don't mean post-Trump necessarily, but I just
No.
mean in the last year.
اوكي بفكر انا انه من سنة وشهر الحياة تغيرت بشكل جذري
Life has changed fundamentally in the last year.
لأنه صار في خوف من على حرية التعبير. إنه مثلاً كتبت إشي بالفيسبوك نفرض مع المقاومة أو ضد الحرب، بصير يقولوا لك أنت تدعم الإرهاب وكذا في محلات الشغل وفي هاي المحل يعني. ففي علاقات خوف كتير خوف، وبالتالي في صمت، بالتالي في تقوقع بالبيوت، فيش كتير نشاط أدبي وفني بالذات يهودي عربي يعني.
Yeah. So there's a lot of fear of expression that is big for Palestinians and 48 in the last year or so, because people have become scared if they write something or post on Facebook or whatever that, kind of expresses some sympathy for resistance, that they'll be accused of being terrorist sympathizers, and it can be a problem in at work or whatever. And also, like, especially with the war in Lebanon, so the amount of people are not moving around as much anymore, and as a result, the amount of cultural activities has really gone down, especially like Jewish, Arab mixed cultural activities. So, and people are not, in general, even Palestinians themselves are not talking to each other so much. People are like in their bubbles at home. You have a question, Mom?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, go for it, yeah.
I know we're at the end. What do you hope this work speaks to?
My work.
Yeah. Contributions and- Yeah.
أي قبل يومين قرينا جزء من رواية، جزء من يولا وأخواتي في الإقامة وين كنت في الريتريت. واحد صار يضحك على الأرض ومش قادر يمسك حاله. فبكفيني إنه يعني إنه حدا يصير يكون اكسايتد أو اللي كتبه أو يكون سوري يصير عنده انتصاب من
So just, I mean, I don't have like a good answer for the question, but just for example, in our residency a few days just before concluding, we did a sort of informal reading of everyone who was participating, where the writers read something they were working on and the translators read something of the writers, not necessarily. So I read the chapter from Yola, your previous novel that I translated, and I'll just give a brief. It's about one of the sisters of this family who has a weird because you're in Palestine in 48, all the Palestinians also in school, they have to learn about the Holocaust in great detail and so on. And she develops this kind of Holocaust fetish about, like, the way that, you know, there's like History Channel buffs or whatever. So she wants to, and so this whole chapter is about how she goes on one of these package tours to the death camps in Poland with a bunch of Orthodox and non-Orthodox Jews, and she steals like the money, she pays for it with the money of one of her sisters who has been committed to a psychiatric institution, and she goes there, and it's all about her kind of experience. And her other obsession is with these Egyptian femme fatales from the 70s. So she goes, it's like her experience, and she doesn't kind of know how to take it in. And every day she's wearing like an outfit from one of these Egyptian films. And at the very end, she has this like very unexpected, fiery, like sexcapade with one of the people who's a like working class Russian immigrant who's on this, who she's very disgusted by. And the people have, bourgeois Palestinians have all these stereotypes about the working class Russian immigrants, that they like smell bad and they don't like, they just eat like tuna and boiled eggs, and they're like, he turns out to be this fantastic lover in bed. So yeah, if I wish we had time, but anyway, the point was that we read this chapter, and we had to keep stopping because everybody kept like laughing so hard, and one of the translators, who's a Jewish American guy, was like laughing so hard that he fell off his chair and was rolling on the floor, and his like face was going to burst, and he was like, and so for like this is enough for what he hopes to achieve with his writing, or that someone gets a hard on.
Thank you.
Also, the books. Yeah. So there's we're still working. I don't have I'm trying to get Yola or Pasi translated like a book contract, but in the meanwhile, there's those who want to read excerpts, I can direct them online, but there's also some copies of the Arabic, the original of Yola and Pasi that are for sale, if anyone wants them. And there's one copy of the Italian translation of Pasi, if anyone reads Italian.
So for those of you who read Arabic.
Mille grazie. Arrivederci.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
I hope it's not another. Thank you, guys. Thank you to our online audience. Good night.